following is a local resident producer's program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
I'm George Curtis. Welcome to It's Your Law. Each week it's my privilege to bring guests that teach all of us about our law, how it's made, what it's supposed to do, what it sometimes does and doesn't do, what we can do to fix it, and to give you some ideas so that you can influence the lawmakers that represent you in Congress, in the legislature, in the governor's spot in the state of Wisconsin, and sometimes even who's going to be a judge that you're elected. So we're interested in educating and informing the public about its law. It's a special treat today to have someone here who is a president-elect of an organization that I've belonged to for probably more than 30 years, and I think it's an important one. He's here to tell you about it and some of the things that are happening in the legislature with your law that you should be concerned about. Attorney Chris Stombaugh, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, George.
Now, you practice law really all over, but your offices are in Platteville. Tell us a little bit about your practice.
Well, my practice has ranged everything from car accidents to medical negligence, and a big part of it over the last 20 years has been involving stray voltage and cases by dairy farmers about their losses caused by utilities.
Well, we're going to get to the stray voltage, but I think people should know that you have been with some of the most successful and prominent law firms in the state of Wisconsin, and the Kasdorf law firm in Milwaukee, which is largely a defense firm. You've been with some plaintiffs' law firms, and you've been a partner in them, and now you're with a national firm. Tell us about that.
Yes, I'm a partner with Don Keenan in the Keenan law firm in Atlanta. And what I especially like about that is the opportunity to teach lawyers all around the country how to better get justice for ordinary people.
Tell us about the organization that you're president-elect.
The Wisconsin Association for Justice is an organization, essentially, I say sometimes that we represent people who represent people. And what we do in that process is make sure that if there's something that affects the rights of ordinary people here in Wisconsin and their right to have a jury trial, that's something that we get focused in on. And that's one of the reasons I'm here today.
This organization is the largest volunteer lawyers organization in the state of Wisconsin. It has nearly 1,000 members, and they represent people as opposed to corporations, trying to give people a chance at a fair trial, sometimes facing great odds, fighting big corporations and the government. That's a kind of a hard bill, isn't it?
It's the toughest job you'll ever love. I think it's sort of like the Peace Corps in that way. And as trial lawyers, we sometimes get a little bit of a bum rap, but the folks who I know by and large who do this do it at great sacrifice, personally and professionally.
Now we're going to talk about stray voltage. Being raised on a farm, I know a little bit about it, and you've specialized in representing primarily farmers who've been victims of stray voltage that has the capability of wiping them out. Explain stray voltage and why we should care.
Well, we should care about stray voltage because agriculture is still, in fact, part of the backbone of this state. And it's hardly ever a situation where only a farm is affected. It affects the entire community. I like to say, and I've said before and written in some newspaper articles about this to help inform the public, that no farm is an island, okay? Because they're agribusiness. Sometimes they'll have 50 or 100 cows, sometimes up to 2,000 or 3,000 cows. But the most important thing to remember about this is it's everyone is interdependent in these small farming communities. The banks, the school system, the feed dealers, everyone depends on everyone else. And if farmers lose the right when they're devastated by something like stray voltage to bring a claim, that means that the whole community loses, because ultimately the only recourse for farmer in that situation is bankruptcy. And we shouldn't have that be the law of this state.
I want you to explain how stray voltage can happen and how it works and the effect on the animals, and then of course the chain reaction on the business, the farm, the family, the school, the bank,
Yes.
and everything else. But what is stray voltage?
Well, stray voltage is sometimes called neutral to earth voltage. And what it is ultimately it's a form of electrical pollution, okay? And it's part of the design of many of our power systems and grids in Wisconsin, where amount of current starts going into the area where the cows are, where it's not necessarily supposed to be. And because of really, if I can back us up a little bit to the 1930s, okay, that's when these power lines, many of which that we rely on in Wisconsin, were originally put up. Many of these lines remain unchanged since the 1930s, and the problem is that as they degrade, a lot more of the electricity, instead of returning back to the power company in the circuit on the wire, actually is returning through the earth, and that's where we're having the problems in 2013 primarily.
And so when this stray voltage is out in the earth, I suppose it can travel through things in the barn like wet concrete, and eventually it gets to the animal.
Yes.
And the animal doesn't understand it. It took us 30 years to understand it. What's the effect on the animal?
Well, there's two primary sources of stray electricity. One is on the neutral wire itself as it comes into a farming operation, and the other is through the earth, like I mentioned. Bessie, the cow, does not care whether she's getting shocked by one versus the other. She's getting shocked and she doesn't like it. And how that affects the animal is they don't want to drink if they're getting shocked when they drink. They have certain behaviors, or the cows behave oddly in ways that are only consistent with getting shocked. So we do know if there's an electrical presence, if it's causing a problem often, but they don't want to drink or eat. It can affect reproduction, and in a very significant way, it even can affect, we believe, the immune systems of the cows, so that they are much less able to fight off disease.
This first segment went real fast, Chris, and we're going to have to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to take it one step further. What happens when an entire herd has been affected by stray voltage? We'll be right back.
Fired up for a career in natural resources? How about becoming a wildland firefighter? This is a job where your office is the great outdoors. Enroll in the Natural Resources Technician program at Fox Valley Technical College. Career opportunities include fish and wildlife management, soil and water conservation, forestry, surveying, plus much more. We feel the greatest way to learn is by doing. Therefore, outdoor on-the-job training is a major part of the coursework. Visit us today for more information.
Sure, my neighbors Jean and Louise, they may be superheroes with superpowers, but that doesn't make them so super at saving energy and money.
Honey?
I may not be able to harness the power of the elements, but I save significant cash and help the environment with appliances, electronics, and windows featuring the Energy Star label. So discover your own energy-saving superpowers. Go to ase.org/consumers.
Mom, Dad's making fondue again.
Welcome back to It's Your Law. I'm George Curtis, and Attorney Chris Stombaugh and I are talking about our civil justice system, and we don't run out of ideas, we run out of time. We were just talking about stray voltage, how it impacts our rural economy. So many dairy cows in the dairy state are affected by this voltage, and it may stop the cows from producing, from reproducing, from eating, and they may be jumpy about going into their stanchions and drinking, and that affects production, which means the farmer loses money, and it's a tough way to make a buck anyway. What recourse has there been in the past for the farmer who all of a sudden has 90 cows that aren't producing, and he's losing money every minute?
Well, the recourse so far has been limited to the judicial system. Okay, and a typical stray voltage case will involve a few elements. Okay, the first is trying to make up for this lost production, which sometimes can go on for years and years. The other aspect is just the and I have to use the word, the hell that the farm family has gone through in this process, because listen, it's their property, it's getting invaded, their animals have been there. This may be a century farm that they've been able to be fine with until the degradation of the system or changes on the power grid itself start bringing stray voltage across property lines and into their land. It's such levels that create these problems. So the other aspect that the farmers can get often at the end of a trial is an injunction, which requires the utility to actually do something about it.
So this power that is escaping
Right.
and is causing damage is produced by a power cooperative or a power company.
Exactly.
And it's causing a real destruction to the farm operation. At least in the past, the farmer had the right to go to court and try to prove it was the responsibility of this power supplier and be awarded damages.
Yes.
Now, those were difficult cases, and I know they were hard-fought, expensive cases with very pricey experts, and to present this clearly to a jury, I'm sure, was a challenge to you and maybe a half dozen other lawyers in Wisconsin who were up to the challenge. But as always happens, when there is a remedy, there's a rumor afoot to stomp out the rights of the people, and there's something going on in the legislature that I want you to tell us about.
Well, there's a bill right now before the Wisconsin legislature which will have the effect of outlawing 99 out of 100 stray voltage cases. So essentially, it's an effort to wipe out the only remedy that a farmer has in this situation. And it is something that must be stopped to protect our farm communities, our farm families, and at risk to our economy.
So up until now, in the present time, if we could prove that the power company was responsible, the power company was also accountable in damages for destroying this farm operation. And of course, now the legislature is in session and someone has come up with a piece of legislation to take away that accountability, which seems to be going on a good deal recently. Right. And what kind of legislation are they proposing?
Well, the legislation which they have sounds good, but unfortunately it is the biggest bait and switch piece of legislation I've seen in my 20 plus years of practice. And what they're saying is that if the standard is met relative to the Public Service Commission and there's voltage above their standard, then the farmer can bring a case. There's a problem. The science behind that standard has shown to be, in fact, many cases fraudulent that we're even basing it on, but even worse, that's not how most farms are affected by stray electricity. Remember, as I said early, it comes in on the wire. That's what we're talking about with that standard that the PSC, the Public Service Commission, has. But most of these, 99 out of 100 cases, are about what's happening through the earth as these basically from the down grounds, or if you go across the country, you see these power lines. Each one of them has a little wire that's coming down to the earth, which is basically sending current into the earth. As we said, these lines age, more power, more current goes into those lines and through the earth than returns actually on the wire. So it sounds complicated, but it's not complicated to the cow because she doesn't like getting shocked by either of them. Okay. So the fact of the matter is that it is really a misleading law, which will have the effect of basically decimating the rights of farmers. And that is a decimation which isn't just limited to that farm. It, like I said, it affects the entire community in a very negative way in terms of revenue or the ability of feed companies to help the farmer to continue to service him while he's in litigation or something like that about the stray voltage. They won't give him money because he has no recourse.
So in a period of time where we have had record attempts in the legislature to put on caps, immunities, and limitations on damages, limitations on the right to get counsel, limitations on attorneys' fees,
yes.
and every kind of handicap possible for the individual citizen to go to court and be represented. This is one more shot at an immunity, isn't it?
Oh, it is. And I have often told the people who are in support of these caps that I would favor them if and only if you can cap the amount of harm you could do to my client. When you can cap the amount of harm you can do to someone, you can cap the amount that you owe them for the harm you've done.
So if this legislation goes through, basically these farmers are without recourse. If they are put out of business, it's another foreclosure, impact on their family, on their bank, on their business, on their community, on their schools, and the power companies or the other responsible people who have caused the damage just go scot-free without any recourse.
Well, and that's in fact true. There is a misleading aspect of this that we haven't talked about, and that is that many of these farmers are part of co-ops, essentially the rural electrical cooperatives. And you would think logically, well, the cooperative doesn't want to hurt one of their own members, and I would agree with you about that. The problem is that all the policy involving stray voltage, all the decisions on whether a case gets settled, in fact, all the testing that's done on stray voltage for those co-ops is not decided at the local co-op level. It's decided by an insurance company in Kansas City, Missouri. They set all the policy for the co-ops, a Federated Rural Electrical Insurance Exchange. And it's not a local decision at all. And they don't care about what happens in Wisconsin.
Oh no, not another insurance company running our world.
It's running everything relative to the policy on stray voltage on the co-ops.
Let's take our second break, and when we come back, let's talk about why everyone, not just farmers, should be alarmed about this legislation. We'll be right back.
After a car accident, Linda Davis needed CPR. Bill Hamilton needed temporary shelter when a fire destroyed his home. During an operation, Haley Reynolds needed a blood transfusion.
Excuse me, may I go into that room, please?
Next year, revenue growth again will be a focus. Top priority.
Thank you for giving me blood.
Thank you for giving me shelter.
Thank you for saving my life.
Support the Red Cross and change a life, starting with your own.
Welcome back to It's Your Law. Attorney Stombaugh and I are talking about one more effort by the insurance industry, while on the one hand convincing people to buy a lot of insurance and corporations to buy a lot of insurance, try to make sure that you can never collect on it. And this is something that has not yet passed. So it's important that people understand and get to their elected representatives and say, stop, this doesn't make sense. This isn't good for Wisconsin. It's not good for anybody but an insurance company.
Well, the thing that has come to light in meeting with our assembly members, and particularly from these rural districts, across party lines, they're quite concerned about this bill and the effect that it's going to have on the dairy community generally. And so that's exciting. I think that there's a lot of opposition to this bill, which has been fomenting for a while.
What do you recommend people who see this show and say, I agree with you, no matter what political party, I agree with you? What should they do?
I think they should call their local representatives, their state assembly person, and also their state senator, and say no to AB 257. It's AB 257 is the stray voltage bill, but it's the only stray voltage bill out there right now, so if they just call it that, it'll be fine.
But we would be remiss, Chris, if we didn't tell them that already a lot of damage has been done to their rights as citizens to get into court and get a fair shake. And there's even more legislation pending to make it worse. What are some of those bills?
Well, we have been looking at various bills, some of which we are working with the legislature to make better. for folks. So even though we have essentially a one-sided legislature at this time, which that's democracy, they have been willing to listen in terms of, for example, like the lemon law. Okay, the lemon law has been largely preserved, even though there was a bill to knock it out, and other issues relative to informed consent of patients, whether patients should be aware of their options. That is still before the legislature right now in the state Senate. So there are many different bills that are at different stages that we need to take a look at. The asbestos bill, which makes it so much more difficult for families that have been afflicted by this horrible, horrible disease to be able to have their day in court, essentially. And many things have been proposed which actually don't even come from Wisconsin. These are bills which are drafted by special lobbying groups and PACs, such as a PAC called ALEC, A-L-E-C, and the Koch brothers, who many of your viewers will be familiar with. And they come to us whole, these bills, and then they just want them rubber stamped by Wisconsin. But this is not what Wisconsin is about. Wisconsin is a progressive, forward-thinking state of pretty smart folks, and we don't fall for anything.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because we have also been victims of the tidal wave, which, as you say, has gone across the country, that seems to be taking away the rights of the public to get to court, making it more expensive to go to court, making medical records more expensive, making expensive experts required, so that people are discouraged from going to court. A lot of contracts of arbitration, so you don't get a right to a jury. Legislation that was recently passed that if a mishap happens to grandma in a nursing home, nobody can come and testify about it in a criminal or a civil case. Right. Some things in terms of even if a doctor admits he made a mistake and cut off the wrong leg, that can't be used against him. Right. The I'm sorry legislation. There has been a tidal wave, it seems to me, of this pro-corporate, anti-citizen legislation that basically, if it goes any further, will take away the Seventh Amendment, the right of people to have a jury of their peers decide justice. That's my feeling. What's yours?
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, but for all the same reasons and then some. Because the jury system is all we have. That is all we have that is totally unaffected by political giving. It should be. Okay. And that is where a person can come into their local community and have a jury of their peers decide the truth about what happened and who is accountable for it. Without that, there's no limitations on what can happen, what corporations and insurance companies can do to folks. And we need that sort of balance. And the jury system has provided that. And we need judges, appellate and Supreme Court judges, who also stand up for the independence of the judiciary relative to our state constitution and our federal constitutions to protect our rights.
Well, and it seems to go back to money. And right now the corporate money seems to be buying our country. And of course that Citizens United decision back of a few years ago was just horrible, where it said that corporations can secretly spend unlimited amount of dollars to influence elections without even letting anybody know who they're backing and who they are. That just doesn't give the ordinary citizen a chance at all, except the jury.
Right. The jury is all we have, essentially, that where we can have people make a decision about what they feel is right. But what these bills continuously do is erode the power of a jury to make a decision. All a cap says is that